Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you're having just a great Monday, right? Because Mondays are, they're capable of being great. They usually aren't. I've got just an absolutely loaded show for you today. Can't wait to get into everything. NBA free agency is in full swing. Obi Toppin re-signing with the Pacers. Going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about some of the other things that have happened. The Fever beat the Phoenix Mercury yesterday for their first win against an above 500 team. That's not the only first that happened in that game yesterday. I'll get into that. Zach Edey has removed himself from Canada's Olympic team, which I think is a mistake. And once again, I've got other major NBA free agency things that are happening that are going to impact the Pacers and their potential repeat run to the Eastern Conference Finals. So we're going to get into all of that. But what I want to start with is this idea that I believe is very true. Selflessness is the most important attribute you can have in sports. We are in the offseason of the two major sports in the United States. Okay, the NBA Finals ended not that long ago. I don't like to think about it. The Mavericks getting swept in a gentlemanly fashion was not my favorite viewing experience of the year. NFL training camp is around the corner, so we're still kind of in this, purgatory of when all that stuff starts. And the NBA Summer League starts on Saturday, but let's be honest, we aren't overly excited about that, okay? Like these are times filled with overreactions, though. These are times filled with overreactions because people have hope and all these things that are going on. Like Anthony Richardson is going to go out for practice here in a couple weeks, and he's going to have a couple great practices. We're going to see these highlight videos on Twitter, and people are going to go absolutely insane. People are going to lose their minds and be like, oh my gosh, why are people sleeping on this guy? Even though everybody keeps saying that he's being slept on. And eventually, if enough people are mentioning this, then he's not actually being slept on. But that's beside the point. Bronny James is going to have a summer league game where he scores like 14 points and hits 3 threes, and people are going to go nuts like, oh, he's going to be great. He's the next Avery Bradley, which people who say that didn't watch Avery Bradley play. That's he was an awesome role player, one of the best defenders on the ball I've ever seen, but whatever. My point is, this is the time of the year that people overreact to everything that happens. In the grand scheme of things, though, this is a weird time of the year where a lot of things that happen really don't matter that much. Seriously, who cares if Anthony Richardson has a couple good training camp practices? It doesn't really mean anything. Who cares if Bronny James goes nuts in a summer league game? It's not going to matter that much because many of these NBA summer league players won't make an NBA roster. And in an NFL training camp, it's great. You can kind of get a gauge on who's going to be good, who's going to be bad. But let's be honest, you don't know and I don't know how good the Colts are going to be or any other team in the NFL until they start playing in real games. That brings me to the NBA free agency and trade season, this time of the year that we're in right now. Of all the things going on right now and of all the things that are about to begin, this is the thing that's going to have the greatest impact on next year's season for the NBA. Okay, all season, free agency and trade stuff is going to have a bigger impact on the NBA's next season than, training camp in the NFL. Okay, for me, this is the only thing going on that actually has, that actually matters. Okay, and that's where we're at right now. And one of the big pieces that NBA fans were waiting to see what happened this offseason is what the Atlanta Hawks were going to do with DeJounte Murray and Trae Young. And they officially traded DeJounte Murray to the Pelicans over the weekend. And I know this trade has nothing to do with the Pacers, but I realized something after this trade happened. So please just bear with me for a moment. The relationship between DeJounte Murray and Trae Young, it didn't work for several reasons. But I would argue the main reason is because they both thought that they needed the ball to be the best version of themselves. And we see this all the time in basketball. Two stars that are great scorers unable to coexist because they both think that they deserve to have the ball more than the other guy. Just look at the Chicago Bulls. Tom and Jerry appear to have a better relationship than Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. And the root of the disdain that they have for each other is rooted in the fact that they believe that they should have the ball more than their counterpart. We see this happen in the NBA time and time again. Why? I would like to think, and for the most part do think, that many of these professional athletes know the history of whatever sport they are playing. Okay? And when I look through, the history of the NFL, when I look through the history of the NBA, selflessness is evident in every dynasty that has ever existed in sports. The Patriots went on a crazy run in the NFL. Okay, in part because Tom Brady was amazing, and also in part because Bill Belichick is the best NFL coach we've ever seen. But a large part of that success was because Tom Brady was selfless enough to give up some salary. Okay, he didn't take, I don't believe Tom Brady was ever the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. He always took less so that Belichick could have the guys that he needed on defense to put together one of the best defenses in the NFL. Tom Brady's selflessness was what largely enabled the Patriots to put together this dynasty. Okay, the Spurs were great for so long because Tim Duncan was selfless. He was totally fine deferring to Tony Parker or Manu Ginobili or Kawhi Leonard when he showed up. Okay, the Warriors were a dynasty because Stephen Curry was selfless enough to welcome in Kevin Durant, and he didn't get butthurt about taking less shots. Okay, the Bulls won 6 championships with Michael Jordan. Not because, in part, obviously, because Michael Jordan was great, but they didn't start to win until Phil Jackson showed up. And if you watch, if you listen to Phil Jackson talk about the hardest part of coaching those teams, especially early, was convincing Michael Jordan to pass the basketball and to trust his teammates. And when that started to happen, the Bulls started to win titles. And then we see the flip of this. We see guys and their selfishness get in the way. Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant should have won more than 3 NBA championships together. But they were too selfish to coexist. Okay, they both thought that they had to be the man, but let's be honest. Do we care? A little bit, but in the grand scheme of things, no, not really. The first title that those two guys won together, Kobe Bryant, wasn't very good, but people don't care because they won, right? And they still give Kobe Bryant the respect that he deserves for winning that title. But once again, they were too selfish to coexist. Kevin Durant goes to the Warriors, and he has concerns over his legacy and what other people outside of the Warriors locker room were saying about him. And because he was so concerned over that and how people saw him, he broke up what would have been one of the best dynasties ever if he had decided to stay in Golden State. Okay, he allowed his legacy and the way he was perceived to break up what would have been just one of the best dynasties we've ever seen. I think that it's clear that in order to win championships in sports, especially basketball, you have to have stars that are willing to be unselfish. It is easier to win a title with Tim Duncan or Steph Curry as your best player than it is, let me think here, Joel Embiid, who has to have the ball, okay, and isn't willing to give it up to other guys. Okay, teams have to have players, specifically their stars. They have to have stars that are willing to sacrifice. I think this is something evident throughout the history of sports, and yet these players just can't seem to grasp that idea. 2 players that did, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They figured out a way to coexist, and it led to them winning a title this year. Okay, they figured out a way to not only coexist with each other, but they also figured out a way to coexist with Drew Holiday and Derek White, right? And they allowed those guys to play well, and it led to them winning a title. That's the best part about having players like Jason Kidd, Magic Johnson, Steph Curry, Bill Russell, Tim Duncan, or Tyrese Haliburton be your team's best player. Every guy that I just mentioned there has an understanding that in order to be great, they may have to sacrifice scoring for the betterment of the team. Okay, like the best Jason Kidd teams or when he was with the Nets, 2002. He's, slinging passes all over the floor, allowing players like Richard Jefferson to get going. Okay, like that is how you have a great team. You have guys that are willing to sacrifice, personal stats so that other guys can play better. And when I think about the Pacers and I think about their future, having a player like Tyrese Haliburton is a huge advantage. Okay, he is the type of superstar that can mold to and fit with any other superstar that the Pacers decide to pair him with. Okay, when we look at his time in Sacramento, he's playing with a guy in De'Aaron Fox who kind of has to be on the ball to be De'Aaron Fox. And so Haliburton was like, that's cool. I can play off the ball and I'll shoot 40% on catch and shoot threes. And I'll be effective in this manner. And when Fox goes to the bench, I'll play point guard and I'll do all the cool passing stuff that I'm capable of. Okay, that is one of the best parts of having Tyrese Haliburton. He can mold to and fit with any superstar the Pacers try to pair him with. And that's important, not just because the Pacers just brought in Pascal Siakam, but it's also important because when Pascal Siakam's contract ends in 4 years, he's going to be 34. And there's no team option at the end of it, and there's no player option at the end of it. That means that there's a decent chance that once these 4 years are up, the Pacers move on. And that's totally fine. That makes sense to me because, at the age of 34 is kind of when players start to go downhill. So during these 4 years, though, Haliburton's ability to be unselfish will continue to not only help Pascal Siakam, but it will also continue to help the role players that the Pacers sign. Okay, and I'm about to talk about Obi Toppin here in a second, but Obi Toppin had his best year of his career this year with the Pacers, and I think a large part of that is because of Tyrese Haliburton. I view Tyrese Haliburton in a similar fashion to Nikola Jokic of the Denver Nuggets. Role players play better with these guys, not only because they're great offensive talents, but because they're both very unselfish passers. I think that's part of why the Pacers shot the ball so well from three this year. They have a lead guard. They have a superstar. The best player on the team is a willing passer. And we've heard GMs say this. We've heard coaches say this. People say this on TV. When your best player sets an example of, I'm going to work hard or I'm going to be unselfish and pass the ball, everyone else tends to fall in line. And that is, I think, what we saw happen with the Pacers this year. They saw how unselfish their best offensive player was, and everyone else fell in line, right? And that's why they shot the ball so well from three. That's why they had the second best offense in the NBA this year, right? And so, we saw this consistent pattern of Tyrese Haliburton finding open teammates and, finding open teammates and being willing to pass on scoring opportunities to get other guys involved. And not only in the half court, but he was doing the exact same thing in the open court. He was more than willing to throw lobs to Obi Toppin, who agreed to a 4-year, $60 million deal over the weekend. And, that's awesome. That's great for Obi Toppin. His first campaign here in Indianapolis was great. It was the best year of his career. He averaged 10 points, 4 rebounds, shot 57% from the field, 40% from three. Okay, he, all those marks were career highs. He's the first player in the history of the NBA to shoot at least 70% on 2-pointers and 40% on 3-pointers. He had an awesome year for the Pacers. Okay, he contributed in the playoffs as well, which is why the Pacers re-signed him. Part of why he played so well, though, was because he played with Tyrese Haliburton, who consistently found him in open spots where he could score. If you're a role player, come to Indy. You're going to play with a guy in Tyrese Haliburton who's going to make you better, right? And this concept applies to several players on the Pacers roster this year, and it's why Tyrese Haliburton is one of the most valuable, not one of the best, one of the most valuable superstars in the NBA. He can mold his play style to fit with any superstar, and he helps make role players better. He does, and it's a huge advantage. The Denver Nuggets have the exact same advantage with Nikola Jokic. No matter who they bring in, they're going to be better just because they're playing with Nikola Jokic. And no matter who the Pacers bring in, they're going to be better because they're playing with Tyrese Haliburton, right? Because his unselfishness and his willingness to pass and move the ball just makes everyone on the floor so much better. When we come back in 4 minutes, Obi Toppin's extension On the surface, I think it looks great, but I honestly don't like the deal long term. If I was the Pacers, I would have gone in a slightly different direction. I'm going to tell you what that is when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Often imitated, never duplicated. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Tickets. Talking about Obi Toppin's extension that he signed over the weekend. 4 years, $60 million. Bit much for me. It's about $15 million a year on average, which feels a little bit heavy. It does. It feels a little much, but I ultimately, I don't mind it, but I kind of do. I'm pretty torn on how I should feel about this Obi Toppin extension. Part of me loves that they re-signed him, right? Like, he's young. He had a great year last year playing with the Pacers. 10 points, 4 rebounds while shooting 57% from the field, 40% from three, 70% from 2-point range. Like, he's a good player. He does all the things that you want NBA players to do now. He knocks down threes and he finishes well around the rim, like check and check. Especially if you're a guy like Obi Toppin, who's going to do a lot of catch and shoot and is going to, score off of cutting to the basket. Like, he checks the boxes. But most importantly, he was able to contribute in the playoffs. And that's obviously what teams are looking for. Okay, like, there's plenty of players that can contribute during the regular season. Plenty of them. Jalen Smith, who is no longer with the Pacers. He signed a 3-year, $27 million deal with the Bulls. Great for him. Great for the Pacers. He doesn't need to be around here. But like Jalen Smith, there are plenty of players that can only contribute in the regular season, but can't help them win in the playoffs. And Obi Toppin is not that. He contributed in the regular season and he contributed in the playoffs. That is what teams want, and that is the type of player that Obi Toppin appears to be. But since the Pacers are keeping him, there are going to be questions, and rightfully so, there are going to be questions about Jarris Walker. What is his role going to be next year? Did he not show very well in the G League? Are there concerns from, the Pacers front office in terms of the type of player that he's going to be? Like there's legitimate questions, and there should be. I'm still going to keep my property on Jarris Walker Island. I still think he's going to be a good player. And let's be honest, the Pacers need a player like Jarris Walker. They need a big wing defender. Okay. And, so I think most people are going to be excited about, Obi Toppin coming back because he did have such a good year. The issue is Obi Toppin isn't what the Pacers need right now. He's not. Yes, he's fun. He shoots the ball well. He finishes in transition. He dunks on people. He's fun. But he's a luxury. He is not what the Pacers need. Jarris Walker is. Now, even though Walker and Toppin do play the same position, I do think there's a world where they can coexist on the floor together. They could put one at the 3, the other at the 4. They could switch a lot of stuff. It'd be kind of cool, but where's Siakam gonna play if they do that? They need Pascal Siakam to play the 4, right? Like, he's the second best player on this team. He's gonna play 35 minutes a night and all those things. So Siakam is going to be on the floor. So there's not going to be much opportunity for Toppin and Walker to share it together. So that clearly means that the majority of the time, only one of them can be on the floor. And they're also going to share some of that time with Aaron Nesmith, right? Who was a starting small forward last year, right? And also in his own right had a pretty good season. So where's Jarris Walker going to slide in? Okay. And with the commitment that the Pacers just made to Toppin, it means that they clearly like him. Okay. They wouldn't have given him a 4-year deal if they didn't. That's kind of the thing for me that really sticks out. It's a 4-year deal. Feels like a 2-year deal, then I would feel better. And I have to be honest, I don't like this new contract for Obi Toppin. I understand that Obi Toppin is a good player. And I understand that he made major contributions to the Pacers' Eastern Conference Finals run. But he is in the way. He is in the way of Jarris Walker developing into the player that the Pacers need. Once again, I feel like Obi Toppin is a luxury, not a necessity. Whereas for the Pacers, I would argue that Jarris Walker is much more of a necessity in terms of the type of player that he can become. Okay. And I'm also a big believer that sometimes you have to take one step back in order to take two steps forward. Like, let's have an honest, realistic look at the Eastern Conference next year. Okay. The Knicks are going to be incredible because they just added Mikal Bridges. The Celtics, the defending champs, are bringing everybody back. Okay. They are. The 76ers are going to be good. Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and they just added Paul George, who I'm going to talk about probably at some point today. The Eastern Conference is going to be better next year. The Bucks, I promise you, will more than likely not walk into round one of the playoffs with both Giannis and Damian Lillard hurt. Okay? That's 4 teams right off the rip that are better than the Pacers are right now. The Pacers would have to make an incredible splash to be as good as those teams, especially the Celtics and the Knicks. They would. The Magic also just signed Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. You could convince me that the Magic are better than the Pacers are right now. Okay, like the Pacers would have to make a pretty significant splash to kind of join the upper echelon of the Eastern Conference. Right now, they don't have the cap space to make that insane splash. And I don't think that any of these second-round draft picks are going to be good enough to help the Pacers reach that next tier of teams. So let me pose a question. Why not take a year to fully invest in the development of Jarris Walker? Okay, the Pacers are already going to be better this year than they were last year because they're going to have Pascal Siakam for the entire season. Why not take the year to fully invest in Jarris Walker and see what he is? The Pacers need, okay, it was blatantly obvious during the playoff run that the Pacers need an elite wing defender in order to be able to compete in the next tier, in order to be able to beat the Boston Celtics, in order to be able to beat the 76ers or the Knicks. Like, they need another wing defender. And once again, Obi Toppin, good player, had a great year last year, but he is not that. Meanwhile, Jarris Walker is supposed to be that. I think that in the long run, the Pacers would have been better off not re-signing Obi Toppin to take this next year to really see what they have in Jarris Walker, because playing in the G League is great, but it's just not the same. It's not. Once again, Obi Toppin, he's a nice player, but he is not what the Pacers need if they want to come out of the East this year or next year or 4 years down the road when his contract ends. The Pacers need a legitimate wing defender. Obi Toppin isn't that. Meanwhile, Jarris Walker could be. So we'll see what the Pacers end up doing. They could always trade Obi Toppin, but the 4-year deal kind of makes that a little more difficult, right? So that means either a different team that's good would have to legitimately like him, or they'd have to trade him to a bad team. And usually bad teams want guys with contracts that are going to expire sooner rather than later. That way they can free up cap space and do all those things. So doesn't look like the Pacers are going to move him anytime soon. Going to be really interesting to see how they manage those Obi Toppin and Jarris Walker minutes as the year progresses next season. Staying in the world of basketball, but moving over to, the most popular athlete in sports right now, Caitlin Clark. The Indiana Fever went on the road and beat the Phoenix Mercury, their first win of the year against a team over 500. They had the Fever, now that June is over, had the third best record in the WNBA in the month of June. I mean, they had a great month. Okay, they went 6-3 on that important 9-game stretch that I'd kind of been stressing over the recent weeks. Okay, if the season ended today, they would be in the playoffs. They are 8-12. They are coming together. And before I talk about the actual game, something important happened yesterday. Something, I wouldn't say, important. Something refreshing. That's probably a better adjective. Something refreshing happened yesterday. So the game's getting ready to tip off. And, if you watch an NBA game, guys will walk around. They dap everybody up. Hey, brother, how you doing? What's going on? I hope you're doing well. Hey, man, I'm about to whoop you. Yada, 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 right? All that happens. If you watch the WNBA, specifically if you watch the Fever, they don't do that. But I was pleasantly surprised to see yesterday that Diana Taurasi dapped up Caitlin Clark before the game started. Diana Taurasi was one of the louder people in questioning Caitlin Clark's transition to the WNBA. And it was so nice to see. It was so refreshing to see Taurasi dap up Caitlin Clark. After that happened, Brittany Griner also daps up Caitlin Clark. Like it was just really nice to see. Like, it was like, do these women actually like respect Caitlin Clark? Is this actually happening? And this is how everyone should be treating Caitlin Clark. They shouldn't coddle her. They shouldn't take it easy on her. They shouldn't even appreciate her, right? Like you don't have to do that. But they should at least respect her because she is a good basketball player. And anyone with a set of eyes can tell that Caitlin Clark is talented. And anyone with a set of eyes can tell that Caitlin Clark is having a positive impact on women's basketball. Okay? The other women in the WNBA should approach Caitlin Clark the same way that Diana Taurasi did yesterday. For the game, Taurasi dapped up Caitlin, and then during the game, she went right at her. Okay, like early in the game, you could kind of feel there was this push and pull of Caitlin Clark being like, yeah, I'm here, Taurasi, watch out. And there was also this, this push against that of Taurasi being like, oh no, Caitlin, like I know I'm 42 years old, but I still got it. They're both pulling up from like 30 feet, like kind of trying to show the other one up. It was great. It was awesome. Like they went at each other, and that is what great players want anyway. Okay, like I guarantee you, Caitlin Clark doesn't want to be coddled. Okay, she doesn't want to be given things. Like she just wants people to play basketball and like have some respect for her. And that was what happened yesterday, right? So during the game, Taurasi and Clark played hard. Before the game, there was like a mutual respect thing. And then after the game, after the competition ended, they went back to respecting each other. Diana Taurasi was asked after the game about Caitlin, and here was what she had to say.
I mean, it's amazing, what Caitlin's been able to do in her short career so far. It's just been nothing short of remarkable. And the one thing that I really love about her, she loves the game. You can tell she's put the work in. And even, throughout, her short WNBA career, it's been a lot of pressure, a lot of things thrown at her, and she keeps showing up and keeps getting better every single game. So her future is super bright, and being a veteran and being in the league for a long, long time, it's pretty cool to see that, and going into the future.
That was Diana Taurasi, WNBA legend. Okay, like I kind of view her as the LeBron of the WNBA, like an all-time great player that has won titles and is nearing the end of her career. And like it was clear before the game, after the game, in those post-game comments, it's clear that Diana Taurasi has respect for Caitlin Clark. And every other WNBA player should have that same level of respect. They don't have to love her. Okay, they don't have to wax poetic about her whenever they're asked questions. Okay, it just needs to be evident that they respect her to some degree. Because I think it will make the league more enjoyable to watch. A little bit of pettiness is okay. A little bit of rivalry is okay. Like, but here's the thing. Angel Reese has that covered, okay? Like, no one else in the WNBA has to worry about being petty towards Caitlin Clark, because Angel Reese, she's got all that covered, all right? But too much of it, too much pettiness, can be taxing on the audience, especially if the player being shown the pettiness is a player that the audience likes. And like the audience clearly likes Caitlin Clark. It's so funny. Like the Fever don't play a road game. Every game they go to, when Caitlin Clark makes a shot, the whole stadium erupts. They go absolutely nuts. Okay, and it's cool. It's great to see. Like the audience clearly likes her. And so like there needs to be less pettiness aimed at her because of that from the players. Okay? And like that was the cool thing about Taurasi. Like I talked about it on Friday. I was like, my pettiness antenna was up. I was like, are we going to see more pettiness after this game from Diana Taurasi? Instead, they just played basketball, and it was great to watch. It was a good game, right? As great as the game itself was, neither Taurasi or Clark played well. They both only shot 2 of 10 from 3. Okay, Clark only finished with 15 points. Taurasi finished with 19. That's just because she got to the free throw line 8 times and made 7 free throws. Okay, outside of that, though, Caitlin Clark outplayed Taurasi. Okay, Caitlin Clark had 12 assists. I believe that she's already broken the Indiana Fever single-season assist record. Okay, and she's still got like 20 games left, which is nuts. She also had 9 rebounds in addition to her 15 points. Okay, when I watch Caitlin Clark play, I'm going to continue to stand by this. Her best ability is her passing ability. It is hands down to me the most impressive part of her game. And Diana Taurasi only had 3 assists. She only had 3 rebounds to go with her 19 points. And in watching this game, the Fever won. It was impressive. I thought they won for 2 different reasons. First reason is they defended at a high level in the second half. Okay, they held the Phoenix Mercury, a team with not 1, not 2, but 3 Olympians. Yeah, they held that team to only 32 points in the second half. Okay, they did a much better job in the second half, not in the first. In the first, the defense wasn't very good. But the second half, I thought they did a much better job of contesting perimeter shots, and they did a better job of pushing Brittany Griner away from the basket. And when Griner got the ball, I thought that they doubled well, caused a couple turnovers doing that. Like the defense in the second half was much better. And that's a coaching thing. That's a thing from Christy Sides. They went into the locker room, and Christy Sides figured out a way to get her young team to play defense in the second half, and that's why they won. Now, I said something nice about Christy Sides. I'm about to say something not so nice coming up here soon. The other reason why the Fever won is because of Kelsey Mitchell. And as I watched this game unfold yesterday, something happened for the first time. Look, if you listen to my show, I'm pretty relaxed on coaches because I've never coached, and I know that they do things that for different reasons that we don't even think about, that we don't even consider. And so I'm very slow to criticize a coach. But Christy Sides did something yesterday for the first time this year that I had a legitimate issue with, that I didn't understand in any way, shape, or form to a point where I'm going to talk about it. Kelsey Mitchell is the Indiana Fever's leading scorer. And Christy Sides did not play Kelsey Mitchell, the Fever's leading scorer, a single second in the second quarter. Didn't see the floor at all. She sat her the entire time. Maybe she was hurt. I didn't think that she was, considering she played pretty well in the third and fourth quarters. Okay? She didn't play a single second in the second quarter. And that was the Fever's lowest scoring quarter of the game. The offense looked clunky. There wasn't enough shot creation on the floor. They just kind of ran two defenders, Caitlin Clark. There wasn't much left over. Then, second half rolls around. Christy Sides is like, oh, I have Kelsey Mitchell. Maybe I should put her in the game. And Kelsey Mitchell then proceeded to score 16 points in the second half. Okay, Kelsey Mitchell, also a pretty good defender. If you watched the game, at the end, Coach Sides is making these offensive and defensive subs, and Kelsey Mitchell stayed on the floor to play defense in big spots. She is a good defender, or at least she's one of the better defenders on this Fever team. Kelsey Mitchell's defense and scoring in the second half was a large part as to why the Fever were able to come back and win the game. They were down 11 heading into the second half. They were down by as many as 15 points. Kelsey Mitchell was the difference. And I don't understand why Coach Sides would keep her on the bench for the entire second quarter. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever to me. Mitchell scoring in the second half, Clark's playmaking and rebounding and finding other ways to impact the game outside of scoring. That and Aaliyah Boston's consistent offense. She had 17 points on 6 of 9 shooting, and the Fever's defense. All of that is what allowed the Fever to win. Like a big game on the road against a good Phoenix Mercury team. Okay, they said that they were like 6-2 when Brittany Griner plays. Now they're 6-3. The Fever grabbed their first win against a team with a record above 500, and it was great. It was impressive. It was fun to watch. Caitlin Clark continuing to get better. The shooting, you're going to have good nights, you're going to have bad nights. It's just part of shooting a lot of shots 27 feet away from the basket, right? You watch Steph play for the Warriors. He has bad nights sometimes too because it's hard to shoot, 30 feet away from the basket when you're constantly getting doubled. So she's figuring it out. The defense is getting better. The Fever look like a good team, and it looks like they're probably going to make the playoffs if they continue to play at this level. It's great seeing them get better. Zach Edey has to get better, and I thought he had an opportunity to do that this summer, but he's going to pass on it. I'm going to tell you what that is when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Welcome back to The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for listening. No matter how you're listening, maybe you're listening in the car, 1430 AM. Maybe you're watching on YouTube, which is, in my opinion, the best place to watch. Join the YouTube chat. Join the conversation. Let me know your thoughts on what I'm saying. You can just go to YouTube, search for Indy Sports Ticket. We'll pop up. You can watch the live stream there. Maybe you're watching on Twitter. Follow us there at Ticket1430. If you just want to tune in and listen to my beautiful voice, semi-beautiful. I don't know. I'm kind of fighting a cold. I've been coughing, and it's just not fun, but that's okay. Now, the 4th of July is coming up. The Olympics are coming up. Like, this is going to be a very patriotic summer. Okay? It's going to be great. It's a great opportunity for people to celebrate America. But the Olympics as a whole are great. It's a great opportunity for people to represent their country. And I thought Zach Edey was going to do that. I thought Zach Edey was going to go play for Team Canada, but he is not. Zach Edey has officially removed himself from Canada's Olympic basketball team. He's not even going to be considered anymore. I think this is a mistake. Okay? Like, I truly believe this is a mistake from Zach Edey. He should go and play in the Olympics. He released a statement to the Canadian basketball team over the weekend as to why he has removed himself from consideration to be on Canada's Olympic team. Here's what he had to say. Quote, "Since last summer, I've been training and competing nonstop to achieve my goals of winning a national championship at Purdue and making it to the NBA. I have a duty now to properly prepare for all that is coming my way with being drafted by the Memphis Grizzlies. The work I put in this summer on my body and my game is critical for me to be the best version of myself." That is what he said. And I've got questions. I wonder if the Grizzlies stepped in and were like, hey, we don't want you to do this. Because I got to be honest, there's no reason in there whatsoever. He just said what he was going to do this summer. And like, can you not work on your game and work on your body while working with the Canadian Olympic team? Like, I believe that the best way to prepare for anything is to do whatever you're preparing for at a level similar to whatever thing you're preparing for. Okay? Like, the Olympics are as close as it gets to playing in the NBA. Okay, you're playing against NBA players in almost every game. Team Canada is going to play Team USA at some point. Like, if Zach Edey wants to get ready for the NBA, then I would think that it would be beneficial for him to play against and also with NBA players, because that was what was going to happen if he had decided to participate in the Olympics. Okay, even in practice for Team Canada, he was going to play against and with several NBA players: Andrew Nembhard, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jamal Murray, Dylan Brooks. Like a lot of NBA guys are on that Canada roster. And I think that it was a mistake on his part to not play with them in the Olympics. Okay, Dan Dockich on his show has said that Edey's time playing for Team Canada in the past, during FIBA 2 summers ago, it was big for him. Like, that is what caused him or led to him wanting to lose, 10 to 15 pounds for his senior year at Purdue. And it paid dividends, right? He was quicker, was a better defender because of it. It was impressive. And I think that, once again, the best thing for him would have been to play for Team Canada this summer. Okay? Because during games and during practices, he would have gotten to face all of the things that these NBA teams are going to do to him during the regular season. Okay, they would have forced Zach Edey to defend the screen and roll. Okay, that's what they would have done, because that's what's going to happen in the NBA this year. They're going to make him do that. And during the Olympics, teams would have done the exact same thing to him. Okay, he would have been forced to defend the pick and roll. He would have had the opportunity also to anchor a defense against better athletes than what he faced in college. Okay, like, he would have gotten to kind of see the adjustment of contesting, LeBron James or Kevin Durant at the rim, as opposed to, Terrence Shannon Jr. or whoever. Okay? On the offensive end, I think is really where he would have grown the most, though, because he wouldn't have posted up that often, right? Because, once again, Team Canada has a lot of NBA players. They've got guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jamal Murray, right? And Andrew Nembhard. And I just don't think that Team Canada would have been like, let's take the ball out of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's hands, the 4th best player in the world. Yeah, let's take the ball out of his hands to let Zach Edey post up. Like, I just don't think that they would have done that. And, Zach Edey would have had the opportunity to run pick and rolls with legitimate NBA guards. Okay, he would have had the opportunity to make plays out of the short roll, that's still the thing that I'm most intrigued by with Zach Edey. Like, is he going to be a good enough passer to be influential on offense? I'd like to think so, but we'll kind of see. That's the one question mark. That's the biggest question mark. Let me say that. It's the biggest question mark I have about Zach Edey's game and it transferring to the NBA level. So I think that he's missing out on what would have been a great opportunity for him to get just a taste of the NBA game. Because no matter what gym he goes to, no matter what trainer he trains with, no matter how much conditioning he does to try to lose weight or whatever he's trying to do with his body, like no matter what he does, it won't be at the same level or at the same intensity as playing in the Olympics. Okay? It won't be at the same intensity as playing in those Team Canada practices because once again, they have they've got plenty of NBA players on that team. They do. So going to be interesting to see what Zach Edey looks like. I'm disappointed, because I was excited to watch him play for Team Canada. I was excited to watch him play with legitimate NBA guys. Now we're going to get workout videos, of him like shooting threes or whatever, and people are going to freak out because it's like I said earlier in the show, it is overreaction season. Okay, people are going to flip out over just the slightest thing that we see. Okay, like this is prime territory for a Ben Simmons workout video. We're going to get that at some point. People will be like, "Oh, he might be back. Here he comes," and then Ben Simmons will indeed not be back. Let's move now to Paul George. Going to play for the 76ers. I think this is the perfect spot for him. I do. Okay, like this is absolutely perfect for Paul George, going and playing in Philadelphia. Okay, the only thing that I worry about for Paul George is that he's playing in Philadelphia. Okay, because he's going to be playoff Paul at some point, and that means he's not going to show up, and then Philadelphia fans are going to absolutely rip him to shreds. But this is still the perfect spot for him because the 76ers gave him the money and the years on the contract that he wanted, that the Clippers would not. Instead, the Clippers were like, hey, let's pay James Harden, which is not a good idea. It's a terrible idea. And so for Paul George, like this makes sense. It's the perfect spot for him. He's going to be the third option behind Embiid and Maxey. And that is where he needs to be. On nights where Joel Embiid is hurt because he's going to miss at least 20 games this year because he's Joel Embiid and he misses at least 20 games every year. On those nights, Paul George is going to get to step up. He's going to be in a more prominent role on those nights. There's going to be just enough, opportunity for him to have, like a 30-point game or whatever, where everyone's like, oh, Paul George, look at him in Philly, man. He's really doing his thing, right? But when they get to the playoffs, a place where Paul George has struggled since leaving Indiana, he's going to get to take a back seat. He is. He's going to take a back seat to Embiid and Maxey. And, if he can just make a couple catch and shoot threes, which, he's a fantastic shooter, no matter how you feel about him, he can really shoot the ball. So I am so intrigued and so ready to see what he looks like in Philly. I think, once again, it's the perfect spot for him. They may have overpaid for him, but when you're the 76ers and you have all that cap space, like you got to spend it on somebody. And you can like Paul George, you can not like Paul George. One thing, though, that you cannot dispute is that he was the best free agent available on the market. He's headed to Philly. Congrats to him. He's getting paid an absolute bag. And before I go to break, really quickly, the most under-the-radar thing that has happened in NBA free agency so far is Chris Paul is going to go and play for the Spurs. I can't wait. It's something that people aren't going to talk about a ton, but the Spurs finally have a guy who can make like a legitimate entry pass. It's going to be great. Okay, Chris Paul is going to play with Stephon Castle, right? The stud out of UConn. He's going to help him learn kind of how to play point guard. But the most exciting thing is Chris Paul is actually going to give Wemby the ball, and we're going to get to see this absolute alien and everything that he's actually capable of doing on a basketball court. I can't wait. Like I said earlier in the show, I love NBA summer free agency because it actually like means something. Like it actually holds weight. Like it's going to have an impact on the next NBA season. Unlike, the summer league, like let's be honest, like the summer league's fun. I like watching it, but most of those guys aren't going to make an NBA roster. NFL training camp is fun, but let's be honest, we don't know how good everyone's going to be until the games actually start. So NBA summer free agency, it's fun. It's a good time. Looking to get some people on during the week to talk about everything going on. Can't wait. Should be a blast. When we come back here in about 5 minutes, Tyrese Haliburton has the most important attribute of that an athlete can have. I'm going to give that to you when we come back here in about 5 minutes.
If a hurricane is coming, is your community ready?
How does a community prepare for the unexpected?
By planning ahead. Taking action now can help minimize the level of storm damage.
So we don't have to keep rebuilding my school after a storm?
And much more. Planners are looking at how to make our community and others safer, so we can get back to our lives more quickly.
Like magic?
It's not magic, it's good planning.
Learn more about how planners are working to help communities at planning.org. Brought to you by the American Planning Association.
Thanks for asking, but I'd rather not send you nude pictures. I'm camera shy. I already said no. It's against my religion. I'm giving my dog a bath, you can have pictures of that. Pressure gives me hives. Under my clothes, I'm a robot. Hold on, let me ask my mom. Sorry, my webcam is broken. I'm worried they'll get passed around school. Unfortunately, I just had my clothes surgically attached to my body. If they got out, I might never be president. I'm already naked, under my clothes. Not even if you were all three Jonas Brothers. I have a rash. I have nudophobia. I have lizard skin. The more you ask, the less I want to. You're not the boss of me. Nudity makes me vomit. I'm a vampire, so I don't show up in pictures anyways. Your badgering has really killed the mood.
When someone is pressuring you to do something you don't want to, how many ways can you say no before they get the message? Let us know at that'snotcool.com. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Tickets. Things are happening. Free agency things in the NBA happening all the time. Good news for Pacers fans. Isaiah Hartenstein will not, once again, he will not be in a New York Knicks uniform next year. Excuse me. Sorry about that. And that's a great thing for the Pacers because he killed the Pacers on the glass. And it was rough. It was rough. But he's heading over to the Western Conference. Isaiah Hartenstein signed by the Thunder, who are just absolutely loaded. Like the one thing that the Knicks needed was just a big that can rebound. And Isaiah Hartenstein is that. He's also a skilled passer. He's going to slide in perfectly with the Thunder. Other things going on in free agency. JB Bickerstaff, hired by the Pistons. Don't mind the hire. I think he's actually going to play Jaden Ivey more than 18 minutes a game like Monty Williams was doing. So I already like him there more than Monty Williams. I thought he did a good job developing young players like Darius Garland in Cleveland. The Pistons have several young guards now, and JB Bickerstaff will have the opportunity to develop them the same way that he did Garland. So excited for Bickerstaff in Detroit. Klay Thompson is leaving the Warriors, which isn't surprising. I know some people are probably upset, but here's the thing, like no dynasty ends pretty. Like Brady Belichick, them breaking up wasn't pretty. Thompson leaving the Warriors, not pretty either. He's just going to cost too much money, and the Warriors don't want to pay him. Like, and I get it. Like, I'd love to see him wind up in Indy. I think he'd be an absolute weapon in Carlisle's offense. You know, I've got some questions about his defense at this point of his career after 3 major injuries, but he'd be good for this Pacers team. The issue is they don't have the money. Like, they just don't. Like, he's one of the few non-Pacer free agents that I'm interested to see where he ends up. Like, I think he's going to have a positive impact wherever he goes. So he's experienced. The shooting speaks for itself. You know, and he has something to prove, right? Like the Warriors have kind of written him off. Like we're going to get revenge Klay Thompson for a year, which I think will be fun. You know, the basketball community as a whole, I think, has kind of moved on from him after these last 2 years. And look, you know, the ability to shoot the ball never leaves. Like I bet Isaiah Thomas could go in a gym right now and knock down jumpers. Like I guarantee you that he could. So if I had to guess where Klay Thompson lands today, I'd bet the Lakers because JJ Redick apparently really wants him. LeBron apparently really wants him. So we'll see. After that, I'd bet Orlando. They have plenty of cap space. And unlike the Colts, they're actually looking to spend the money that they have in that cap space area. So selflessness is the most important attribute in sports. It is. And it's part of what makes Tyrese Haliburton so incredible. So we're in the offseason of the 2 major sports in the United States. The NBA Finals ended not that long ago. I don't like to think about it. I don't. The Mavericks getting swept in a gentlemanly fashion was not exactly my favorite viewing experience of the year. But hey, you know, it happens sometimes, you know. NFL training camp, that is right around the corner. NBA Summer League action coming up this weekend, actually. So that's not far away. And these are the times filled with overreactions. Okay? They just are. Overreactions are coming from just every corner. They are. Okay? Like Anthony Richardson is going to have like 3 good practices and like they're all going to happen consecutively. And there's going to be videos. People are going to be like, oh my gosh, did you guys see that throw that Anthony Richardson just made in shorts and a helmet? I mean, just wow. He's in shorts and a helmet. You know, there's no pressure on him, but he put that ball, I mean, just right on the money. And people are going to go absolutely nuts. They are. Bronny James is going to score 14 points in a summer league game, and he's going to be like 5 of 16 from the floor. And people are going to go crazy, like, oh my gosh, Bronny James just scored 14 points in a summer league game. He's going to be great. Next great role player. You know, LeBron, just such a smart guy. That is undoubtedly going to happen. Okay, it is. And here's the thing. NFL training camp doesn't matter that much, and neither does Summer League. Like many of these NBA Summer League guys aren't going to make an NBA roster. And NFL training camp is great. It's good to get, in pads and like run the offense and go full 11 on 11 or 7 on 7 or and just all the different things that these guys do. Like it's great. It's important. But let's be honest. You don't know how good your team is going to be until they start playing real games against real opponents. Okay, they are, because you can sit back, and you can watch Anthony Richardson, just tear up the Colts defense. And you can sit there and be like, well, is Anthony Richardson good or is this defense just really bad? Right? Like there's always going to be questions around training camp and the NBA Summer League. Right? And it leads to overreactions, and it's fun, but it doesn't mean all that much. Meanwhile, while people are focused on those two things, NBA free agency and trade season is happening right now. This is the time of year that will have the greatest impact on next year's NBA season. Okay? That's where we're at right now. And over the weekend, if you're an NBA guy or woman, I guess, one of the big questions going into the NBA offseason is, what are the Hawks going to do with DeJounte Murray and Trae Young? Over the weekend, they traded away DeJounte Murray to the Pelicans, officially ending the underwhelming partnership between DeJounte Murray and Trae Young. And look, I know, this is a trade that has nothing to do with the Pacers, doesn't have anything to do with the Eastern Conference, at least in a important way, because who cares about the Hawks? So just give me 1 sec, okay? And I promise I'm going to bring this back to the Pacers. The relationship between Murray and Young was a relationship that did not work for several reasons. But I would argue the main reason is because they both thought that they needed the ball to be successful. They both thought that they needed the basketball to be the best version of themselves. And we see this a lot in basketball. We do. 2 stars that are great scorers, but are unable to coexist because they think they deserve to have the ball more than the other guy. Just look at the Bulls. Tom and Jerry appear to have a better relationship. Yes, the cartoon. They appear to have a better relationship than Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. Okay, 2 guys who don't like each other because they think that they should have the ball more than the other guy. The root of their disdain for each other is rooted in both of them thinking that they deserve to have the ball more than their counterpart. And we see this type of relationship happen time and time again. Why? Okay, I would like to think that these professional athletes know the history of the game, just the history of sports in general. And selflessness is an evident feature in every dynasty that has ever existed in sports. The Patriots went on a crazy run in the NFL because Tom Brady was selfless enough to give up some salary so that Bill Belichick could sign the defensive players that he needed in order to have a great defense. Okay, the Spurs were great for so long because Tim Duncan was selfless and he was willing to get Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili and eventually Kawhi Leonard and all these guys involved. The Warriors became a dynasty because Stephen Curry was selfless enough to welcome in Kevin Durant and give up some shots and give up some opportunity with the ball so that they could add another great player. The Bulls won 6 championships with Michael Jordan, in part because Michael Jordan's great, but also because Phil Jackson showed up and was able to convince Michael to pass the ball and to trust his teammates. Selflessness is important, and selfishness can ruin teams. Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant should have won more than 3 championships together, but they were too selfish to coexist. Kevin Durant's concern over his legacy and what people were saying about him, not about the Warriors, but specifically about him, broke up what would have been one of the best dynasties ever in Golden State. In order to win a championship in sports, you have to have stars that are willing and capable of being unselfish. Okay, teams have to have players that are willing to sacrifice. Why don't these players understand that? Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, 2 dynamic scorers, 2 guys who can go get a bucket whenever they want, 2 guys that if they took a year where they're like, I'm going to win MVP this year. If one of those 2 guys had a year where that was their goal and they fully went after it, then they could win MVP. But instead of doing that, they have figured out how to coexist, and it led to them winning a title this year. Okay, like having unselfish or selfless players on your team is important. Like when your best players, Jason Kidd or Magic Johnson or Steph Curry or Bill Russell or Tim Duncan or Tyrese Haliburton, if that is your team's best player, that is a huge advantage because your best player then has an understanding that sacrificing, scoring or whatever for the betterment of the team is the easiest and really the only way to win at the highest level in terms of like winning titles and things. Okay, like when I think about the future of the Indiana Pacers, having a player like Tyrese Haliburton is a real advantage. He is the type of superstar that can mold to and fit with any other superstar that the Pacers try to pair him with. When he was in Sacramento, playing alongside De'Aaron Fox, a ball-dominant, explosive guard, he played off the ball. And he was like, that's fine. I'll play off the ball. It's like when I get it, I can keep it moving, or I can catch and shoot at a 40% clip from three, because that's what he did when he was in Sacramento. Okay? And so he can mold to and fit with any superstar the Pacers try to pair him with. And look, he's going to mold his game to fit with Pascal Siakam. I think it's going to go well. But in 4 years, Siakam's contract's going to be up. He'll be 34. Who knows if he ends up coming back to play with the Pacers after that. So that means that there's a decent chance that once these 4 years are up, the Pacers are going to move on. They're going to bring in another superstar to play with Haliburton. And from there, we're going to see him once again mold and fit his game to whoever the Pacers decide to bring in as his co-star after Siakam is done. Okay? During these 4 years, though, Haliburton's ability to be unselfish will continue to not only help Siakam, but it will continue to help the role players that the Pacers continue to sign, right? Because, look, if you play with Tyrese Haliburton and you're a role player, you're going to play above your weight. I view Tyrese Haliburton in a similar fashion to how I view Nikola Jokic. Role players play better with players like Tyrese Haliburton and Nikola Jokic because they are both not only great offensive players, capable of scoring, but they are both unselfish passers. They are both more than willing to move the basketball. That is part of why the Pacers shot the ball so well from three this last year. Tyrese Haliburton was willing and able to find open teammates. And when he saw open teammates, didn't matter who it was, didn't matter if they were 1 of 7 from three that game, he was going to make the pass. Right? And that willingness to move the basketball and to pass on scoring opportunities in order to get his teammates involved was why the Pacers had the second best offense in the NBA this year. And that's just in the half court. In the open court, he was even better. He was more than willing to throw lobs to guys like Obi Toppin, who agreed to a 4-year, $60 million deal over the weekend. Okay, and Obi Toppin had a great first campaign in Indianapolis. Okay, it was the best year of his career. He averaged 10 points, 4 rebounds, while shooting 57% from the field, including 40% from three. All those marks were career highs. In the process, he became the first qualified player in NBA history to shoot at least 70% on two-pointers and 40% on three-pointers. He contributed in the playoffs as well, which is, why the Pacers re-signed him. Okay, that's what every team is looking for, a guy who can contribute in the playoffs. But part of why he played so well was not only because, he's a good player and he's talented, and he's athletic, and he can play above the rim and all these things. And, he was obviously in a great system. But part of why he played so well and set career highs is because he played with Tyrese Haliburton, who consistently found him in open spots where he could score. Okay, he played alongside a selfless superstar, right? And that applies to several players on the Pacers roster this year. And it's why Tyrese Haliburton is one of the most valuable, not best, one of the most valuable superstars in the NBA. He can mold his play style to fit with any superstar, and he makes the role players he plays with even better. That is what you want in a superstar, right? Because when you have someone who is unselfish, right, and willing to move the ball and do all those things, everyone else has to fall in line. Okay, every team tends to take on the identity of whoever their best player is. And I think we saw that with the Pacers this year. The best player, Tyrese Haliburton, was unselfish and willing to move the basketball. And everyone else that played for the Pacers this year was unselfish and willing to move the basketball. Tyrese Haliburton is awesome, and he's going to continue to elevate this team. He's going to continue to elevate Obi Toppin, who signed a 4-year extension over the weekend. I got to be honest. I've got questions. I'm not the biggest fan of the extension. I'm going to get into that when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you guys are having just the best day, the best Monday. I know I'm having a pretty decently good Monday. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's on the Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download on the App Store or the Google Play Store. Just, you can just search for, the Indy Sports Ticket app. We should pop up. Download it. You can stream the show there. You can also stream the Dan Dockett Show every day from noon to 3. In addition to that, you can watch on YouTube. Just search for Indy Sports Ticket, and we should pop up pretty quickly there. Join the live stream. Join the chat. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on everything that I'm saying. Or you can just watch on Twitter. You can just tune in, give it a nice little listen. Follow us there at Ticket 1430. Obi Toppin has agreed to a 4-year, $60 million deal over the weekend. Pretty torn on how I'm supposed to feel about this. Okay? Like, there's a part of me that likes the extension, and there's another part of me that doesn't like the extension. Okay? The part of me that loves that they re-signed him focuses on things on like how he's young, and he had a great year last year, right? Once again, averaged 10 points, 4 rebounds while shooting 57% from the field and 40% from behind the three-point line. Like, that was a career year for him. Hands down, the best year of his career. He wasn't just a good player that could play in the regular season like Jalen Smith, who's now headed off to Chicago, 3 years, $27 million to go play for the Bulls. Which, why anyone would want to go play for the Bulls right now is beyond me. I don't get that one. But hey, whatever you want to do sticks. So we'll, but yeah, like, he's a good player. Obi Toppin played well in the playoffs, right? And that's what teams are looking for. Okay, not just players that can contribute in the regular season, but players that can help them win, not only a first-round series, but deep in the playoffs. And that is what Obi Toppin did. Therefore, I have to assume that that's who he is, a role player that can contribute in a playoff series. But this is the question everyone's going to be asking. Since the Pacers are keeping him, what is Jarris Walker's role going to be next year? Okay, the Pacers need a big wing defender. Jarris Walker is that. Like, that's who Jarris Walker is. 6'8", long arms, athletic, moves well laterally, right? Checks all those boxes. And, I like Obi Toppin. I think I made that clear. I think he's a good player. But he's not that. He's not going to be an elite wing defender. Okay? And Obi Toppin is going to eat into the minutes that Jarris Walker would have gotten if the Pacers had let Obi Toppin walk, or if they had decided to trade him. Now, I do think that Jarris Walker and Obi Toppin are capable of sharing the floor together. But they also play the same position. Like, in terms of them sharing the floor together, like, I do think that there's a world where, we see one at the we see like Walker at the 3, and we see Obi Toppin at the 4, or something like that. But the issue with that is clearly that, the Pacers have Pascal Siakam, and they want Pascal Siakam on the floor as much as possible, and that's going to be Siakam playing that power forward spot. Okay, so like, there's not going to be tons of minutes where they can put them both on the floor together. So that means that only one of them is going to get those minutes. Only one of them. Okay, and clearly they like Obi Toppin because, they wouldn't have given him a 4-year deal. They wouldn't have committed to him long-term, because 4 years in the NBA now, like, that's a decent amount of time. Like they've committed to him kind of long-term here. And so, like, they like him, and it's like, what's going to happen with Jarris Walker? And because they've committed to him for so long, I don't like the deal. I don't. I understand that Obi Toppin is a good player. I understand that he contributed in the playoffs. I understand that he contributed in the Eastern Conference Finals, nonetheless. But he's in the way. He is. Obi Toppin is in the way of 19, 20-year-old Jarris Walker developing into the player that the Pacers need. When I look at Obi Toppin, he is a luxury. Okay? He can run the floor, at the highest level. He finishes well in transition. If he's open, for three. He can clearly knock it down, 40% from three last year. But he's a luxury. That is not what the Pacers need. The Pacers need a player like Jarris Walker. Okay, a guy who can step out onto the wing and defend Jason Tatum. A guy who can step out on the wing and defend Jaylen Brown. That's the type of player that they need. And re-signing Obi Toppin and bringing him back gets in the way of his development. Sometimes I think that you have to take a step back in order to take two steps forward. Okay? And let's be honest here. If there's any year to take a step back in an effort to take two steps forward, it's next year for the Pacers. Because the Eastern Conference is absolutely loaded. The Knicks are going to be incredible. Okay, Jalen, they should be healthier next year in the playoffs, you would think. They're bringing in Mikal Bridges. Okay, OG Anunoby's going to be there. Mitchell Robinson's going to be there. Isaiah Hartenstein left, but they can go find a backup center. Okay, they'll be fine. So the Knicks are going to be good once again. The Boston Celtics, bringing everyone back. Okay, like everybody's coming back. Everyone that contributed to them winning a title are back. Okay, so like they're once again going to be atop the Eastern Conference, and we saw how that series with them went this last year. Not very well. They got swept. And yes, they had an opportunity, the Pacers did, to win a couple of games, but they couldn't get it done because the Celtics are really good. And then you look at the 76ers, who went and added Paul George to play with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. That's a lot of star power. Okay? Paul George is your third option, then you're in a pretty good place when it comes to having stars. So the 76ers are once again going to be a good team. Like the Eastern Conference is going to be tough next year. Okay, the Milwaukee Bucks, they're going to be better next year. Or, well, at least they're going to be healthier. Like seriously, what are the chances that the Bucks limp into the playoffs again with Giannis not appearing in a single playoff game and Damian Lillard also being hurt? Like they're going to be better next year. Probably better than the Pacers. So as of right now, between the Celtics, the Knicks, the 76ers, and the Bucks, the Pacers would be the fifth best team in the East. But the Orlando Magic just signed Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Paulo Banchero, and Franz Wagner are going to come back better. Like there's a real world where even with bringing back Obi Toppin, the Pacers are once again the sixth best team in the Eastern Conference. Okay, the only way that the Pacers will be able to make that leap into being as good as, the Celtics and the Knicks and kind of these upper echelon Eastern Conference teams is they would have to make some sort of significant splash. Okay, like that is what would have to happen for them. And they don't have the cap space to do that. Okay, now maybe Benedict Mathurin comes back and he's a much better player, right? Maybe he takes like just this huge leap and all of a sudden we're like, oh, now the Pacers have like three guys. Then that would obviously change things, but I'm not going to bet on that. So why not take this next season and fully invest in the development of young 20-year-old Jarris Walker? Okay, like I understand he played in the G League. There are people who are writing him off because of that, but the dude's 19, okay? Like still filling out, growing, and doing all those things. Like he's going to get better as time continues on. So if I was the Pacers, that is the direction that I would have preferred for them to go in. Okay, like Jarris Walker is supposed to be this elite wing defender that the Pacers need, right? Because Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum aren't going anywhere. Like you got to have at least one guy that can guard those dudes. And Jarris Walker is supposed to be that. Meanwhile, like Obi Toppin, once again, nice player, but he's not what the Pacers need if they want to come out of the East. Okay, he's a nice luxury piece, right? Who, can contribute in the playoffs, and like that's nice and it's important, but he's not what they need. Okay, the Pacers need a guy more like Jarris Walker. So we'll see what they wind up doing. It'll be interesting. Let's stay in the world of basketball. Let's stay in the state of Indiana. Let's talk about the Fever, who went on the road yesterday to beat the Phoenix Mercury, their first win against a team that's over 500, and it was great. I had a fun time watching the game. I was pleasantly surprised at what happened before the game started. Before the game, Diana Taurasi walks up to Caitlin Clark, daps her up, gives her a little hug, probably whispers in her ear. You see them talking during free throws and stuff. Like, it was cool. It was nice to see. It was a nice little change of pace from how Caitlin Clark has been treated by the other women in the WNBA. And what's really interesting about it is Diana Taurasi was one of the louder people questioning Caitlin Clark's transition to the WNBA. She was. Okay, like I played the audio on Friday. So it was nice to see Taurasi, like, and literally and figuratively, embrace Caitlin Clark before the game. Like, this is how everyone in the WNBA should be treating Caitlin Clark. They shouldn't coddle her. They shouldn't take it easy on her. They shouldn't let her win. They don't even have to appreciate her, for all I care, but they should respect her. Okay, I think that's really the only thing that the audience wants to see, because anyone with a set of eyes can tell that Caitlin Clark's talented, and anyone with a set of eyes can tell that she's having a positive impact on the game and on women's basketball. Okay, so the other women in the WNBA should approach Caitlin Clark in a similar fashion to the way that Diana Taurasi did yesterday. Before the game, she dapped her up. During the game, though, they went at each other. Right? Like, that's what great competitors and great players want anyway. Great players want the challenge of playing against other great players. And to start the game, like, you could kind of feel the tension, and you could see through some of the shot selection that Caitlin Clark was like, "Hey, Taurasi, like, I'm here. Like, I'm coming. Like, I'm here. I'm not even coming. Like, I'm here. I'm a good player. Like, let's go." And Taurasi was like, "You're a good player, but you're not as good as me." And they're chucking, 30-footers. Neither one really played great, but it was still fun to watch. Then after the game, they went back to respecting each other. And I thought it was pretty evident in Diana Taurasi's post-game comments about Caitlin Clark that she likes her and that she thinks that she's a good player. And, like, it's evident that she has some level of respect for Caitlin Clark based on what she said after the game yesterday.
I mean, it's amazing, what Caitlin's been able to do in her short career so far. It's just been nothing short of remarkable. And the one thing that I really love about her, she loves the game. You can tell she's put the work in. And even, throughout, her short WNBA career, it's been a lot of pressure, a lot of things thrown at her, and she keeps showing up and keeps getting better every single game. So her future is super bright, and being a veteran and being in the league for a long, long time, it's pretty cool to see that, and going into the future.
That was Diana Taurasi of the Phoenix Mercury, just a WNBA legend, and in every part of the word, right? Like, she's been in the league for a long time. She's had a lot of success. She's been around. She's like 42. She's been in the league for 20 years. She's kind of like the LeBron James of the WNBA. And it's very clear that Taurasi has respect for Caitlin Clark. And every other WNBA player should. I'm interested to see if this causes some sort of ripple effect of, like, okay, Taurasi clearly respects her. That means we all should too. Maybe that happens. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. We'll see. Once again, these other WNBA players, they don't have to love her. Okay, they don't have to wax poetic about her every time that she gets brought up in, like a media thing. Like, they just need to respect her, right? Because it will make the league more enjoyable to watch. Okay, a little bit of pettiness is okay. Okay, like, a little bit of pettiness is fun, right? You can kind of sprinkle it in there. But here's the thing. Angel Reese has the pettiness toward Caitlin Clark covered, okay? Like, she's got that. And too much of it, too much pettiness, too much rivalry, too much, trash talk in the media can just be the audience likes the player that people are trashing. So it was nice to see Taurasi not participate in the pettiness. It was. Instead, they just played basketball, and they competed at a high level, and it was fun to watch. And as much fun as it was to watch, and as great of a game as it was, neither Caitlin Clark nor Diana Taurasi played well. Both only shot 2 of 10 from 3. Caitlin Clark finished with 15 points. Diana Taurasi finished with 19, just because she got to the free throw line eight times and hit 7 of them. Outside of that, though, Clark outplayed Taurasi. She had 12 assists and 9 rebounds, 1 rebound away from being the first rookie in the history of the WNBA to record a triple-double. It's coming. It's happening at some point. So 15 points, 12 assists, and 9 rebounds for Caitlin Clark yesterday. Her passing ability is still just my favorite part of her game. Okay. It stands out more so than anything else. Tyrese only had 3 assists and 3 rebounds to go with her 19 points. So I thought Caitlin Clark outplayed her yesterday. And I think that's part of why the Fever won, but I wouldn't say that's one of the 2 main reasons. Okay. I like the first reason why the Fever won was the defense that they played in the second half. They held the Phoenix Mercury, a team with not 1, not 2, but 3 Olympians on it. They held them to only 32 points in the second half. The defensive intensity was up. It was fun to watch. Like, they played defense at a high level. I thought they did a much better job of contesting perimeter shots. I thought they did a better job of pushing Brittany Griner away from the basket so she wasn't catching the ball as deep. And when Griner did get the ball wherever she was, they doubled her well, right? They forced a couple turnovers. The defense in the second half was much better. Like, Christy Sides did a great job going into halftime and being like, hey, we have to defend better. Here's what we're going to do. You need to do this. And most importantly, the intensity has to be up. I thought Christy Sides did a good job of getting them to defend better in the second half. The other reason why the Fever won is because of Kelsey Mitchell. And, I just praised Christy Sides. I thought she did a good job getting her team to play defense in the second half. With that being said, she did something yesterday for the first time all year with the Fever that I actually have an issue with. Okay, look, if you've listened to my show for any amount of time, I'm pretty lax on coaches because, look, I've never coached, and I know that their thought process is very different than mine as a fan. And so, I'm pretty hesitant to be like, why would you do that? That's stupid, because, coaches have just, they've done it way more than I have, and their thought process is better than mine. Okay, if I had a good thought process in terms of coaching, then I wouldn't be doing a radio show. Okay, I'd be coaching whoever. So I'm very slow to critique coaches, but I have to critique Christy Sides because in the second quarter yesterday, she didn't play Kelsey Mitchell. She didn't play her team's leading scorer a single second in the second quarter. Instead, Christy Sides opted to take Kelsey Mitchell and put her on the bench for the entire second quarter. She sat her the entire time. And that was the Fever's lowest scoring quarter of the game. Okay, Kelsey Mitchell then plays in the third and in the second half of the fourth quarter. She played the final 5 minutes. In that time, she scored 16 points. She played really well. She shot the ball. I thought she defended well. She's a good defender. Okay, she's definitely one of the better defenders on this Fever team. If you paid attention at the end of the game to how Christy Sides was subbing in offense and defense, Kelsey Mitchell was on the floor for those important defensive possessions as it was a close game late down the stretch. So Kelsey Mitchell's defense and scoring in the second half was a large part in why the Fever were able to come back and win the game. They were down 11 heading into the second half. Kelsey Mitchell was a large part of why they were able to come back and win that game. I don't understand why Coach Sides would keep her on the bench for the entire second quarter. Okay, but all in all, the reasons why the Fever won were because of Mitchell scoring in the second half, the way that, Caitlin Clark's playmaking, every time she gets the ball in transition, you just know it feels like the Fever are going to score because you know that Clark's either going to score herself or she's going to find the open teammate. Okay, Aaliyah Boston was consistent on the offensive end, led the Fever in scoring, 17 points on 6 of 9 shooting. I thought the Fever's defense in the second half was awesome. Okay, that's what allowed them to get back into the game. And yeah, it was great. The Fever get their first win against a team over 500 this season. Just really impressive. So much fun. Now, something else that would have been impressive was watching Zach Edey play on Canada's Olympic team, but he has removed himself from consideration to be on Canada's Olympic basketball team. I think that's a mistake. I'm going to tell you why when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Tickets. Thanks for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, whether that's through the Indy Sports Ticket app, maybe you're watching on YouTube, just search for us there, Indy Sports Ticket, join the chat and have a blast with us. Maybe you're just watching on Twitter. Thanks for watching there as well. Follow us at Ticket1430. Zach Edey has removed himself from Canada's Olympic basketball team officially. This is a mistake. He released a statement to Canadian basketball as to why he's removed himself from consideration to be on Canada's Olympic team. But the statement doesn't really tell you why. Like, here's what he said, quote, "Since last summer, I've been training and competing nonstop to achieve my goals of winning a national championship at Purdue and making it to the NBA. I have a duty now to properly prepare for all that is coming my way with being drafted by the Memphis Grizzlies. The work I put in this summer on my body and my game is critical for me to be the best version of myself." That's his quote. That's cool. I think that the best way to prepare for anything is to actually do the thing that you're preparing for. And look, the Olympics are as close as it gets to playing in the NBA. Okay, like it is. Like, you're playing against NBA players every time out. Okay, like they're probably going to play Team USA at some point. And I just think it'd be good for Zach Edey to play against Team USA and to play against LeBron and Kevin Durant and Steph Curry and Haliburton and Anthony Edwards. And, the list goes on because it's nothing but NBA players. And even if he didn't play that much during the actual Olympic Games, the practices would have been great for him. They would have been, like, even in practice, he would have gotten to play against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jamal Murray, Dylan Brooks, like Andrew Nembhard, several like legitimate NBA guys. Okay, like that would have been just, I think, a great experience for him getting to play with and against those dudes. And on top of it, Dan Dockich, who's on after me from noon to 3, he has talked about this, about how, the summer before Edey's senior season, so last summer, he played with Team Canada, and that is what convinced him to lose weight heading into his senior year at Purdue. And that's part of why, he was a good defender and all those things. Like, it's important. It is. So going to be, interesting to see what he does over the summer. I think that the best thing for him would have been for him to play for Team Canada. Okay, like teams, when they played against him, in games and also in practice, teams would have done all of the things that NBA teams are going to try to do to him. Okay, he would have been forced to defend the pick and roll. Okay, and he would have had the opportunity to anchor a defense against better athletes than what he faced in college, because it's different when Jamal Murray is attacking you at the rim than Terrence Shannon Jr., right, or whoever else you want to name from the Big Ten. Like, it's different, and he would have had the opportunity to make the plays out of the short roll, like on the offensive end. I think he really would have developed there. And so, I just feel like he's missing out on a great opportunity to play with and be around and play against legitimate NBA guys. Instead, though, I guess he's going to go to some empty gym, and I guess, wherever he wants to go. And, he'll work on his conditioning. He'll focus on his weight. He'll work on his overall game. I'm assuming it'll be a lot of shooting stuff, a lot of working on playing out of the short roll, because it's going to be a lot of pick and roll stuff with him. So it's going to be interesting. Once again, I feel like he's just missing out on an opportunity to be with and around some NBA guys. But hey, Edey's, seems like a smart guy. I'm sure he's doing whatever he's doing for a great reason. The Grizzlies could also be stepping in and being like, hey, we don't want you to play in the Olympics. I don't know why they do that, but like that is also a possibility. So going to be interesting to see kind of what he looks like. That means that we might see him play in the summer league, right? If he's not going to play in the Olympics. So that'll be fun. Once again, the summer league starts July 6th. That's, I think, the California one. And then the one in Vegas probably starts up here in a couple of weeks. So that'll be interesting. Excited to see what Paul George looks like on the 76ers. I think this makes sense for him. Like, he's in the perfect spot, right? He's going to be the third option behind Embiid and Maxey. There are going to be nights where Joel Embiid is hurt And on those nights, Paul George he'll get to step up. He'll score, 30 points. People will go crazy like, oh, Paul George, third best player on the 76ers. Watch out, guys. They're going to be good. And then when they get to the playoffs, it'll be even more perfect for Paul George because he'll be the third best player, which means he's going to get to take a back seat to Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. That means no playoff P, right? Which is great for the 76ers because playoff P, when he shows up, things don't go well. They don't. Ever since Paul George has left Indiana, he hasn't been good in the playoffs. So perfect spot for him. Great for the 76ers. They cleared all that cap space. They've got to sign like 8 more guys to have a full roster. So they've got a busy offseason ahead for themselves. So that's good for Philly. Going to make the Eastern Conference a little more interesting than what it already was this past season. JB Bickerstaff hired by the Pistons. I like it. I don't mind the hire. He's going to play Jaden Ivey more than 18 minutes a game like Monty Williams was doing. So I already like JB Bickerstaff more than I liked Monty Williams in Detroit. So I thought Bickerstaff did a good job developing young players like Darius Garland in Cleveland. Pistons have a plethora of young guards. And so Bickerstaff is going to have a real opportunity to develop these guys the same way that he did Garland when he was coaching in Cleveland. Klay Thompson, he's leaving the Warriors. This isn't surprising. Like the Warriors they just can't afford him. Like he's just going to cost too much money. They don't want to pay the luxury tax. They don't want to be in the second apron, which is like a death sentence at this point. So, Klay Thompson moving on from the Warriors. It's an end of an era. No more Splash Bros. Okay, and so sucks. And I've got questions about Klay Thompson. I think he'd be a great fit here in Indy. With that being said, he's not coming to Indy. He costs too much money. Pacers just don't have the money to pay him. But I think he'd be a good fit on a team similar to the Pacers, right? A place where he can space the floor, knock down threes, a team that's great at moving the ball. Obviously, there are questions about his defense. Like he's older, 3 major surgeries on ACL, Achilles. Like it's just not fun. But like he'd be good for this Pacers team or a team similar to this, that moves the ball and spaces the floor well. He's one of the few non-Pacer free agents this year. Klay Thompson is that I'm interested in seeing where he ends up. He's going to have a positive impact wherever he goes. Just older, smart, leadership, all those things. He's also a great shooter. He's got something to prove, which is always fun to watch because a lot of people, I think, have kind of written him off of like, well, look, he's old, a lot of injuries, didn't play great for the Warriors. The Warriors haven't been in the playoffs these last 2 years, so he's washed, he's done. Just the thing, man, the ability to shoot the ball never leaves. Like I bet Dan could go in a gym right now and start knocking down some jumpers. Isaiah Thomas could probably do the exact same thing. So Klay Thompson's going to have a positive impact wherever he ends up. If I had to guess today where Klay Thompson ends up playing next season, I'd bet the Lakers. His dad played for the Lakers. JJ Redick wants him. LeBron apparently wants him. If he doesn't end up there, then I think Orlando's got plenty of cap space. And unlike the Colts, they are looking to spend their money. Last big, or one of the 2 last big kind of free agency moves, Isaiah Hartenstein to the Thunder. The Thunder are absolutely loaded. Okay, like they might wind up being the favorites to win the whole thing after this move because he's kind of the missing piece. The Thunder were in need of a big who can rebound. Isaiah Hartenstein can obviously do that, as all of us Pacer fans know. And not only can he rebound, he's a good passer too. Like you can run offense through him at like the elbow because he's such a good passer. So the Thunder, they got even better, right? After having the best record in the Western Conference, like they're bringing in a guy like Isaiah Hartenstein. They re-signed Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins, a couple of important role players for them. Like they are loaded with talent. Don't forget they got rid of Josh Giddey, brought in Alex Caruso. Like they're going to be so tough to play against. And yeah, like the Thunder are going to be awesome this next season. There's going to be plenty of people picking them to win the whole thing, which makes sense because once again, like they have a lot of good players. And then finally, kind of an under the radar thing that happened that I don't think enough people are talking about. The Spurs went and got Chris Paul, which is awesome. Hall of Fame point guard joining forces with a future Hall of Famer in Victor Wembanyama because he appears like he's going to be that good. It's nice. Like the Spurs finally have a player on their team that can make an entry pass. They got a player on their team who will defer to Wemby. They've got a player on their team in Chris Paul who's going to find ways to get him the ball. And more importantly, like this Spurs team is young, and having a guy on the floor like Chris Paul as a second coach, because that's what he is at this point, to kind of help guide the offense and make sure that Wemby gets the ball in spots where he needs it. Like it's going to be fun. It's going to be awesome. That is one of my favorite moves made during this offseason, and I can't wait to see how it unfolds heading into the next season, the season that we have ahead. And so, because it's going to be here before we know it, I just can't wait for all of it. It's going to be an absolute blast. So that's going to do it for the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Thanks for tuning in on, the YouTube. If you didn't tune in there, Indy Sports Ticket, go subscribe, putting videos out, doing all those things. Maybe you're watching on Twitter at Ticket1430. That is also much appreciated as well. I'll be back on the air tomorrow from 10 to noon. Can't wait for that. Dan Dockett Show coming up in 5 minutes. It's going to be great. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll be back on the air tomorrow from 10 to noon. I will talk to you then.